Hello, everyone. This is Thor. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the astrology chart of Lisa Marie Presley. As many of you are aware, she recently passed away. And so I wanted to take a look at her chart so that we could get a better perspective of her life. She had a lot of ups and downs in her life. So, it's going to be really interesting to take a look at. Many of you are aware she was the daughter of legendary Elvis Presley, and she had a lot to live up to being the daughter of Elvis, or the king, as they called him. So let's go ahead and take a look at the chart. For those of you that are new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can get all of my videos. I like doing celebrity videos, royal family videos, monthly predictions. So those are the type of videos that you can get with my channel. I do practice Vedic sidereal astrology. I know I get some comments occasionally where people are saying, no, you know, somebody is this sign, but they're using Western tropical astrology. So remember, Vedic sidereal astrology is the astrology of ancient India. If you're interested in a private reading, check for details down below. I do have a discount going on that I just started the other day for the rest of January. So those of you that were asking for a discount, I did start a new discount for the remainder of January. I'm going to give you a disclaimer about this reading. This is for entertainment purposes only, and all of the statements about Lisa Marie Presley, they're all allegedlys, and this is just based on my opinion of the astrology chart. So keep that in mind as we're, taking a look at the chart. Okay, so before we start, I really wanted to talk about, we have several purposes when we're born on this earth. And as many of you are aware, the foundations of Vedic astrology, they're really based in Eastern thought. So, for example, religions like Hinduism or Buddhism. So there's this idea of reincarnation, that we've lived a lot of lifetimes, thousands of lifetimes. And we're here for essentially two reasons. So, one of the reasons we're here is to pay back karma. Some of that karma is bad, some of it's good. It really depends on, what's in our karmic bank account, so to speak. Also, we're here because we still have desires that we want to fulfill, and that's what Rahu represents in our charts. So that's something to keep in mind, that it really is an opportunity to be born on this planet, because we have the opportunity and the privilege to pay back a lot of those karmas that are in that karmic database. And of course, as we learn from these karmas and we gain a lot more wisdom, we become greater and greater souls. So let's take a look at Lisa Marie Presley, the chart here. This is the chart, and I'm looking for my pen here. So Lisa Marie was a Cancer ascendant. So it's interesting because whenever I saw Lisa Marie Presley, I always felt like she had this strong empathic type of vibe. And this definitely shows in the chart. Cancer people tend to wear their heart on their sleeves. So they do tend to be very sensitive souls. And I think that's one of the things to keep in mind when we're thinking about Lisa Marie Presley, is that a lot of the challenges may have been caused because of being born such a sensitive soul. So if we look at the ruling planet is the moon in Lisa Marie's chart. And so it's always important to take a look at where the first lord goes in our charts. So it's in the eighth house. And as many of you may recall in some of the past videos I've done, whenever you have planets in either the eighth house or the 12th house, it does show somebody that's intuitive or has psychic abilities, or maybe they're interested in metaphysics, because the eighth house is the house of death and rebirth. It's the house of healing, of tantra. So there's a lot of meanings that come with the eighth house. Okay. So she very much had this mystical side to her, even if I'm not sure if this was shown out in the public or not, but I see it very clearly in the chart, this mystical side. She also had Mars in the eighth house. Again, to me, that shows again that just adds fuel to this whole mysterious um, type of vibe. But it also shows on another level, she could have been, or maybe she was, and we didn't know this. She could have been a very powerful healer in a lot of ways. And when our charts show that we're healers, it's more than just being, for example, a doctor or something like that. Being a healer could literally be, your presence on the planet is a healing type of vibration. So I want you to be aware of that. But she could have also been a Reiki healer or somebody that did some sort of healing with crystals. Now I don't know if she did that, but I'm saying that was the possibilities within the chart. So there definitely is this idea of um, being somebody who is very interested in mysteries and secrets because of what the eighth house represents. Now, the eighth house is a very volatile house. So I do want to remind everybody of that. And Moon is next to Mars. So this shows there was a lot of pressure on the mind, on the emotions. Whenever I see this placement, for example, in a client's chart, it can show a lot of emotional turbulence throughout the lifetime. It could show a lot of emotional turbulence coming through the mother because of the significations of the mother in the chart being the moon, but also it shows a lot of emotional turbulence and unhealed emotional issues from past lives. So some of the things we may have seen with Lisa Marie, for example, she struggled a lot with addiction through her life. Well, there was a lot of traumatic experiences, especially from past lives that are indicated in the chart. So when somebody's trying to soothe, that mind or that consciousness, sometimes people turn to substances or other things to try to calm the mind. Now, she would have actually been a great candidate, and maybe she did do this, but I would have definitely been recommending meditation on a daily basis, just because of that emotional turbulence. And again, I say that this comes from past lives. A lot of us are born with certain emotional temperaments. So if you see, for example, twins are born and one child is a very cranky type of kid, and then the other child is a very happy type of personality, that all comes from our samskaras from past lives. So we have certain mental tendencies and beliefs that we have from past lives. So Mars with Moon would show that there was a lot of turbulence there. All right, let's go back to the chart. One of the things I wanted to point out before we move on to, I did want to talk about her father and the relationship there with Elvis, but let's talk about Venus being in the sixth house. Okay, so Venus is the Karaka, or the planet. It does represent um, it can represent like the pleasures of life. So if you think of the sensual five pleasures or five senses, and most people on this planet are pursuing some sort of gratification of those five sense pleasures. So whether it be too much food, relationships, that's what Venus really represents. So when it's in the sixth house, remember that the sixth house really represents imbalance. And so when we see people that suffer from like addictions, um, and things like that, a lot of times I'll see Venus in the sixth house. And of course, when I'm reading a client's chart, I try to be very gentle about that, but that there's a possibility of issues with addictions and so forth. But Venus in the sixth house, believe it or not, could also show a lot of trouble with other women in her life as well. So if you have Venus in your chart and it's negatively like in the sixth house, or it's negatively aspected by other planets, it does show your relationship with that gender in your chart. So for example, Mars would be the other gender. So Mars would be like your relationship with your brothers or with general male figures in your life. So in Venus in the sixth house shows a lot of trouble there. Also, when we take a look at where Saturn is aspecting, if we take a look at some of the houses, and I'm just writing these numbers here so we can, but you'll notice that the 10th aspect of Saturn is on the 6th house as well. Again, this can show health difficulties. And also, again, there was a lot of, believe it or not, this shows that there was a lot of jealous or envious people in her life as well. So she did face a lot of issues of people being jealous, envious, probably because of, how the circumstances in which she was born, which she didn't really have any control of. I mean, she was just born as the daughter of Elvis, but it does show that there was a lot of difficulty there in the chart. Let me clean up the chart. But on the flip side of that, I want you all to be aware of, you know, a planet has both positive and negative polarities. So somebody with Venus in the 6th house could be a tremendous, for example, like a substance abuse counselor. They could be somebody that lives a life of service and they get a lot of pleasure through living that life of service. So, for example, I read in her bio that she was a philanthropist. And so she did actually help quite a bit of people out, and she got a lot of pleasure through that, because remember, wherever the planet Venus is in your chart is going to show a certain amount of pleasure being derived from whatever activities that house represents in your chart. So let's take a look at her relationship with her father, because that's really interesting to take a look at, because I do feel like from a young age her father was obviously a really important figure in the world, one of the most well-known musicians of all time. But also, he passed away at such a young age for Lisa Marie Presley. So this is very difficult. So what we usually look at in Vedic astrology, and this is something you can look at in your individual charts, when you're looking at anything with your father, you always want to look at the sun, and then you always want to look at the ninth house. So there's two different indications there um, of what, your relationship with your father could be like. So I wanted to focus in on this idea of the ninth house here. We get a lot of information with the ninth house. You'll notice that Saturn is there. So a lot of difficulty came out of the ninth house. So to me, because Saturn rules the eighth house and the seventh house, this really shows, a lot of the karma of the early death of her father and how that really affected her. And this really was a lifelong influence in her life. I feel like when this happened, it was with her. I think they said she was 10 years old when this happened, but this was really a pivotal event in her life. You'll notice that Rahu is there next to Saturn as well. So remember, Rahu tends to expand things and it tends to make things larger than life. So when I'm looking at the chart, it makes me feel that Lisa Marie Presley, she really did feel that her father was larger than life. And there was a desire there to really be something like her father. Okay, so Rahu's there. So it shows a desire to be this. But also, ninth house can represent even being a teacher. So there's a lot of being an important figure like her father is definitely indicated there. Now, the interesting thing is Saturn shows this heavy karma. So it's like she faced all these obstacles of maybe she was wanting to be a lot like her father, but then her father passed away at a young age. So it's like that was the first obstacle, and then she just had this life of dealing with addictions, 4 marriages that she went through. So there was a lot of challenges there. Let's go back to the chart here. And let me clean that up. One of the important things I want to bring up is, a lot of our Saturn karma, it tends to mitigate at the age of 36 years. Okay. That's when Saturn matures. So a lot of your Saturn karma will start to, it's almost like it starts to let off the gas a little bit at the age of 36. But I want to tell you the exception. And Lisa Marie Presley had the exception. If Saturn is with one of the karmic nodes, either Rahu or Ketu, you're essentially dealing with this karma not for 36 years, but for 48 years. So there's more of this, it's like this longer lasting heavy karma that you have to deal with, because now you have to wait till Rahu and Ketu reach their ages of maturity, which is 48 years. So this idea of this lifelong, till essentially she was the age of 50 of dealing with this really heavy karma of her father. So I want you all to keep that in mind. So this was a lifelong thing, that was definitely, from my opinion, in her, affected her mind, her consciousness, her whole life. All right, let's clean up the chart. The other thing I wanted to bring up is I wanted to take a look at, because she was married 4 times. And I know two of the 4 marriages, two of the marriages that I wasn't necessarily familiar with. The 2 marriages, her first marriage and I think her third marriage. But she was also married for a very brief time to Michael Jackson, and she was married to Nicolas Cage. So it's really interesting. So she did marry some interesting people. Let's go back to the chart. When we're looking at the marriage house, you'll notice that one of the things you can look at in your chart is Jupiter. If Jupiter's conjoining any planets, especially if you're a woman, and this is a general rule, in traditional Vedic astrology, in a man's chart, you look at the condition of Venus. In a woman's chart, you look at the condition of Jupiter. But I know there's a lot of gray area there, but it's in traditional Vedic astrology. And I don't notice anything out of sorts really with Jupiter besides its retrograde. The one thing I wanted to bring up was the 9th house is really where we get this idea of multiple marriages. We have to look at what's the ruler of the 7th house, and that's Saturn there. So interestingly enough, and Saturn with Rahu. So Rahu tends to, remember, expand or exaggerate things. So this theme of marriage, which is represented by the 7th house, is being expanded. It's being essentially multiplied in a lot of ways, because Rahu tends to exaggerate. So this idea of going through multiple marriages, it's because the 7th lord is being influenced by Rahu. So there was a lot of heavy karma there with marriage. Also, you'll notice that Sun is in the 7th house. So Sun could show somebody like a level of fame, and that's where we maybe get like Michael Jackson, Nicolas Cage, that some of these marriages were to people that had quite a level of charisma or fame associated with them. But this is the interesting thing that I want you all to know about marriages, and this might even be a little bit controversial in a lot of ways. So when we look at a Vedic astrology chart, the idea is every level of marriage you go through. So you may have more than one soulmate in your lifetime, or more than one person you marry. And each person you marry does represent a certain level of healing and karmic healing that you go through in your life. So if you're somebody where you go through a lot of marriages, there was a lot of different layers of healing that actually happened in your life. So in a weird way, when we look at this, it's not necessarily a tragic thing that she married 4 times. It's not like oh my gosh, that's horrible, she had all these relationships. In a way, from a perspective of consciousness, we could see that it was a splendid opportunity for a lot of healing from a lot of issues from past lives, because every spouse represented a new layer of healing in her life. Now, I'm not telling everyone to go out and get married and get divorced, but what I am saying is that there's always lessons learned with every marriage. So every marriage partner is going to have a particular set of issues or that you're working on. And I'm not going to go through every one of those in Lisa Marie's chart just for the sake of time. But she made a quantum leap in consciousness during her lifetime. So there's a lot of things that should be celebrated with that. She was able to really advance her consciousness, because when I look at the chart, there's a lot of difficulty from past lives. So she was able to resolve a lot of negative karma in this current lifetime. So in a lot of ways, we should be um, I think that this was an extraordinary life. And like I said, Venus in the sixth house, I did read that she was quite a philanthropist, like her father was. So she really did help a lot of people along the way as well. So very interesting and very interesting life. By the way, I just wanted to add this real quick. She did have Jupiter in the second house. So this could show, I know she had a career as a musician. So this could show whenever you have benefic planets in the second house, this could show having a good voice or making it as a musician. Also, if you have planets in the fifth house, by the way, that can show being a musician or artist of some capacity. Now, the last thing I wanted to bring up is if we take a look at the Navamsa chart in Lisa Marie Presley's chart, one of the things you want to look at in your chart is your Navamsa chart represents your dharma in the lifetime, like whether you're able to achieve um, living your dharma, whether you're, how easy is it for you to live out your life purpose. It's going to be shown in your Navamsa chart, the supplemental chart. So let's take a look at that. If you have malefic planets in the first house of your Navamsa chart, it can show a lot of difficulty, that there was a lot of roadblocks for you trying to live up to your dharma or your purpose. In Lisa Marie's chart, I did notice that planet Saturn is in the first house of Scorpio in the Navamsa chart. And Saturn represents a blockage. So in a lot of ways, it represents a lot of karmic obstacles. So in order for her to live her purpose and live her dharma, she had this path that was littered with all these karmic obstacles that we might not even fully be aware of. But she had, from her perspective, in a lot of ways, it felt like things were working against her. Okay. So the idea of like losing her father from a young age, the idea of these addictions, the idea of, these different relationships. So from her perspective, when you have something like Saturn in the first house, it can feel like the universe isn't such a friendly place. It can feel like, oh my gosh, why are these all these obstacles preventing me from what I want to do? But I do feel that she was able to live her purpose. Okay. So there was a lot of obstacles there. And so there's a lot of compassion that's required in trying to understand a life like Lisa Marie Presley. Um, so I'm very happy that I was able to look at this chart and give a little bit of insight. When we have challenges in our chart, it does usually show in our birth chart. Our birth chart is a model of reality, so it doesn't include every little thing that we go through, but it will give us a sense of some of our challenges, some of our strengths, and so forth. So let me know what you all think down below in the comments. What did you think about Lisa Marie Presley? Any comments regarding her life would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.